You're listening to STAGR Cast, brought to you by STAGR Gear. All right, this is episode number 12 of STAGR Cast, and we're down here in southern Vermont tonight with Jeremy Ballantine, and we're here to talk some big bucks, talk about tracking bucks, finding bucks, and hunting bucks for multiple years. So thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate it.
Hey, man, it's good you guys can make it down.
Yeah, it's awesome. You've been on some podcasts, I think Northeast Hunting Film podcast. Those are some good podcasts you've been on.
Big Buck Registry.
Yep.
A couple other ones around. I can't think of the names right now, but
Yeah,
It's a good one.
You got quite the reputation now, so a lot of people know you.
I just hunt hard and I love talking about it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And then you got the YouTube presence too over the years and
Yep.
stuff like that.
Yeah, I used to film a lot. I haven't filmed in the past probably 3 or 4 years, but
Yep.
you know.
Yeah. You get a lot of good videos of tracking bucks and stuff that
Yeah.
in the early days a lot of people weren't doing it. And you kind of started the YouTube thing in the Northeast, it seemed like.
Yeah.
A lot of your content.
Yeah,
But,
guiding moose, that was another big passion of mine too.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I'll have to get into that a little bit. But so we usually kick it off with what's called the Shameless Stats segment here. So we've been talking a lot of the big buck killers we've been talking to. We ask them how many 200-pounders they've gotten, their best scoring bucks, Pope and Youngs, if any, Boone and Crockett's, that type of stuff. So you want to hit us with some numbers? I know you got some, so let's hear it.
I haven't, as far as antler-wise, I haven't killed anything. Boone and Crockett, my best buck is mid-150s.
That's a good one.
I killed him with a bow in Missouri. But my best buck in the Northeast, mid-140s, that was a 9-point. I killed in Vermont with a muzzleloader.
Okay.
I've probably killed, I don't know, I'm thinking 14 or so, 13, 14 bucks over 115, 120.
That's
Somewhere around there.
good.
A lot of bucks mid-120s to upper 130s. I've shot a lot of them.
Yep.
So, as far as 200-pounders, some of my Midwestern deer never saw a scale, but I shot 2 bucks that were, one that was right at 200, one was 192 last day of Vermont muzzleloader.
That's a hammer right there.
So he was a 200. I consider him a 200-pound buck.
Absolutely.
But a lot of my big antler deer down here, 5-6-year-old bucks, are going to be 170 to 185.
Yep.
That seems to be the body weight that I'm dealing with. So
Just the genetics down in this area.
and those deer, most of those big bucks are all shot with snow on the ground, Thanksgiving week or muzzleloader.
Yep.
So I figure if they're 185 at that time of the year, they were probably close to 200 in October.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Seems like you kill a lot of bucks with muzzleloaders over the years.
I love
Is that your
post
thing?
rut is my favorite.
Yeah.
I love tracking bucks post rut. Like you can track a buck early November if you get that snow, but man, those are some of the deer you're like, I tracked him 5 miles and I never even caught up to him. But you get a buck post rut or when that rut's starting to wind down. Thanksgiving week is my favorite.
You can catch them.
Yeah, they're tired. They're starting to get in, and they can get, if you can get one with a hot doe.
Yep.
A lot of times that time of the year they're with those really small does, like those 80, 90 pounders. I think it's the first time they come into heat, and they came into heat late.
Yep.
And they can tire that doe out really quick, it seems like, and she just wants to keep going and bedding and bedding and bedding. And I followed bucks before where all they're doing is just keep nudging her out of her bed, and it's you catch up to those deer because they're wasting a lot of time. So, between Vermont and Massachusetts, Massachusetts with having the late season, you're going to get some snow at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, right.
Yeah, that late season's handy. It goes right to the first of the year, right? I think you and I were just talking about that.
Yeah,
and you're definitely hunting. You're hunting post-rut bucks there at the point where you got to be careful you don't pull their antlers off. You got to drag,
I've seen that before in some pictures and videos.
Yeah,
people pulling
it can
they
happen.
get up to them, lift their heads up, and the horns pop right off.
Track a buck that doesn't have anything on his head.
Or that.
Yeah. I heard
just one side, whatever.
Yeah. I heard a story. A guy shot one, and then when he got up to it, the antlers weren't there.
You got to turn around and go shed hunting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, there it is, dimple in the snow.
Yeah.
But that's crazy.
But yeah, pile of bucks. I mean, I put a lot of effort in, and I try to shoot 2 or 3 every year, if I can. I love going down hunting publicly in Jersey during bow season, the pre-rut, and then come back home, bow hunt Mass, and wait for snow.
Yep. Yeah.
That's kind of like the yearly game plan.
Yep. So it's primarily New Jersey, Vermont, Massachusetts. That's how you roll.
Yeah.
And you're doing some elk hunting in between
September.
that too, right?
Yeah.
You're going out there and chasing them with a bow?
Yeah. Yeah, I've hunted Colorado, Idaho, and Montana.
Are those all over-the-counter tags, or do you got those?
They're all over the counter. Yeah. The Montana tag, you got to apply for the general tag, but you get it. Now it's getting harder and harder every year now.
Is it more? Is there a lot more interest in that?
Yeah. Idaho, they sell out like within 20 minutes. It's a first come first serve, but they sell out really fast now.
Yep.
Just a lot more people into it since like
Do you think social media?
100%.
Is social media is the big push in that?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I figured.
And COVID. Once COVID hit, everyone was inside watching YouTube videos.
Right.
And everyone was watching Elk 101 and Randy Newberg, and they were just like watching Born and Raised and all. And how could you not get excited watching that stuff? And they're just like, wait, everyone else is just sitting home. They're calling all their buddies, hey, let's put an elk hunt together.
Yep.
You know? Yep. And that's how it's gained so much popularity.
Yeah, a lot of guys doing the DIY, just heading out there in their trucks and doing it, right?
Yep.
Yep. Do you see hunters out there when you're out there nowadays?
You see a lot of them.
You do? You run into a lot of people?
I mean, you can pull into a trailhead and there'll be 15, 20 trucks there.
Oh, no kidding.
And you can't let it discourage you because you'll hunt all day and never see one of them.
Yeah.
Right.
There's all that
huge.
wilderness
It's
just
huge.
soaks up those people.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about vast wilderness.
Yeah. Are the elks like spread out out there? Or are they kind of real like,
No, they're
small
in pockets.
They are in pockets.
Like you walk through a lot of country and not run into any elk, and then boom, you find one drainage and it's a bonanza. There's a dozen elk in there.
Yeah.
No kidding. Do you think elk hunting has made you a better whitetail hunter in the Northeast?
Well, the one thing it's done is it's distracted me from my early season whitetail, but it definitely whips you into shape. So, I mean, you're walking 10 miles plus a day in those mountains elk hunting with a pack on. You're in phenomenal shape when you get back in October.
So your cardio's on point for deer season?
And you want to train for it all year, you know?
Right.
I mean, my job is fairly physical. I've got a tool belt on. I'm going up and down stairs and stuff, and then I try to hike with a heavy pack on whenever I can. But that elk hunting is the most physically demanding thing you'll do for hunting.
Because you're high altitude too. There's not as much air up there.
Yeah.
When you get there, you drag an ass for the first few days.
Colorado, you're dealing with the lowest that I've hunted in Colorado is probably 8,500 feet, up to almost 13,000.
Yeah.
You know, touch over timberline. It all depends on if you're there early, those elk are higher, and if you're there later, they start to move down during the rut. But and then when you kill one, you're looking at 100 pounds each trip, packing it out.
Yeah.
And 2 guys, you can do it in 2 trips, but 2 really heavy trips.
That's some work.
So absolutely. You know, you're cooking those elk steaks up. You know where they came from. Yeah.
I gotta try. I've never had elk. I gotta try it.
It's my favorite venison.
Is it? That's what a lot of people say. It's the best venison you can get.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
I'm almost out of it, and it's almost September.
Really?
Oh, boy.
Did you go last year?
I went last year. I did not shoot one.
Okay.
So
what's your best score in elk?
I shot one right at Pope and Young minimum in Colorado.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
It was right at that 270.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
big
cool
heavy
stuff.
horn 5x5, and he was a herd bull. He had probably 15, 16 cows with him.
Yeah.
But I've shot a lot of them in that 200-inch range, 200 to 230, something like that.
Yeah.
Anything big and any good branch antlered bull on public land for me, driving from Vermont is getting
you're
shot.
driving all the way out there. You're not flying nothing.
No, I'm driving. You gotta bring 300.
That's a good point.
400
you
pounds
can't
of
really
meat
fly
back.
that.
And then you got your tent, your cooking equipment, your bows. You want to bring those antlers.
Right.
You know the antlers would cost a fortune to ship back.
Do you stick them on top of the rig? Or?
Absolutely. You get tons of thumbs up. The whole,
I bet you do.
It's phenomenal the whole way back. You know, you get people coming up honking, giving you the high five. You know, so.
How have you thought of trying the elk hunting down in PA? Because
I apply for a PA and a Kentucky tag every year.
And you haven't got.
The odds.
Is it hard?
We have a better
right?
chance of getting struck by lightning right now.
It's that hard.
Yeah.
Really?
Super hard.
Yeah.
And they're like monster elk
Huge.
down there, right?
Isn't
Why
that
are
where
they,
the record elk pretty
they're
much
shooting
are? Like
400 inches.
why are they getting so big?
Because they're not getting hunted. They're just a lot of them
Just
are on
growing
private. A lot of them are on private land.
Oh my goodness.
There's elk that big out west.
Oh, okay.
It's just they're on super private property there's elk out there that live and die and never get hunted.
That's awesome.
Because they're on huge tracts of private land. You know,
in the private versus public land laws out there are a lot different compared to here.
You
right?
do not trespass.
You can't.
Out there
You can't even corner
whatsoever.
cut, right?
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, there's a big thing about that.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Those guys didn't get prosecuted, I guess.
Uh-huh.
But it's only a matter of time before they do something.
That seems.
And I don't see why they would care. It's like,
Yeah.
we're just going from public
Your
to
shoulders
public.
are in.
Yeah, they're just those landowners are. I think it's greed and jealousy, and they're trying to lease out the hunting rights to that public, and I'm not really sure the politics on it, but I don't agree with it.
I hear you. It seems weird.
It's
for sure.
It's just we're paying so much. I mean, you go to Montana, you're paying $1,000 for an elk tag.
That's what it is.
Let me go hunt that public ground.
Yeah.
It's hard, and it's a 10% success rate as it is. So let me hunt that public ground, shoot some elk. I'm just killing one elk, and I'm going home.
Yep. Yeah, you're bringing a lot of money into that economy over there too, gas and
every state. It's getting to be that. I mean, Colorado right now. The first year I ever went to Colorado when I was 20, I think I paid $200 for an elk tag. Now it's $800.
Oh my god!
Yeah, they don't give them away, and you're not guaranteed success either. That's a big gamble. Yeah.
Now, are you coming out every night when you're elk hunting, or are you?
A lot of times we'll spike camp in.
You will
sometimes, but a lot of times we're hunting right from the road.
Okay.
Or it's just a lot more convenient to have all your stuff in the truck, all your cooking gear and stuff. But we will spike if we find elk.
Like deep or something.
Yeah, I mean it's the thing. How far can you pack one? It's like we've packed them up to 4 or 5 miles, but it's you gotta pack that all the way back to the truck. The last thing you want to do, unload that meat and then hike back in there 4 or 5 miles
and do it again.
Load that pack up again. You are cooked.
Yeah.
And then pack back out again. It's how far can you pack one? Yeah, you can spike camp back in there 3 miles and then hunt another 3. Can you pack all that meat out before it spoils in 70-degree weather? It's tough.
Something to think about.
Yeah, you got to consider it.
Yep.
And the elk are, you can kind of relate a lot of it to the deer back here. You can find overlooked corners that are within 2 miles of a road that are full of elk. It's just overlooked by other hunters.
Right.
So it's just a matter of figuring it out.
Being creative.
You gotta just grind the whole time and just try to find elk. It's about covering ground and finding animals because they're in pockets. So
kind of like some deer are up here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So when do you roll back into the Northeast after you elk hunt out there?
It'll be this year. I'm going out mid-September, and I'll be back at the very end of the season.
And you said that's when you had bow hunting after that?
Yeah, but this year I've got an Iowa tag.
Okay.
So we wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to guide moose because moose is going to roll right into late 20s of October.
Do you guide moose in Vermont or
in Vermont.
Up north?
Yeah. Now it's only up north.
I say because you used to do southern. You used to be like one of the best southern Vermont guides.
The southern Vermont was awesome. I could scout whenever I wanted, and it was a lot easier to scout. Now I got to drive all the way up to the northern.
That's a haul from here.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're not giving some tags out
There's
down this
really
way.
not. There's some moose down here, but they really need to. Like, I mean, I'm amazed they're giving out either sex tags in the north.
Really?
I'm just like, let those moose rebound. That's one of the greatest things we have in the state.
Right.
It's like there's Boone and Crockett moose running everywhere. We do not have Boone and Crockett deer running everywhere. But there's some gigantic moose.
I got a picture of a Boone and Crockett moose.
We had some phenomenal moose down here. I mean, where we're sitting right here, we've killed 2 bulls that are over 55 inches within 3/4 of a mile of here.
No kidding.
Like there was a phenomenal group of moose just down the road here, but you can hardly find one now. There's maybe 1 or 2 moose around all these cuts down the road. It's just between those ticks and habitat. It's all of our national forests. It just needs some logging.
Right.
We just don't have the habitat. But up north, man, the moose are starting to do really good.
Yeah. Okay.
Or still doing good, rather.
Yeah. Yeah, they pull some nice bulls out of there every year up there, and you see like.
How many tags do they give?
What is it this year?
I don't know what they gave for numbers this year. I didn't even look, but I just.
Is it like
I applied
50?
all 3 states.
It's 100 something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
like
in the
150. I think it's like 150 this year. I put in for
in Vermont 150.
Yeah,
in Vermont.
I put in for 150. I think it is this year.
My buddy drew for Maine.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
I put in for up there too. I didn't get picked. But
I've been applying at Maine for 25 years.
Really?
Still never got one.
This was his second year.
Man. That's usually
lucky,
when
right?
people drive.
Yeah.
Oh, first
Second
time
year.
I ever applied. Drew tag. Yeah. Oh, yeah, cool.
I remember the Vermont Golden Days, man. They used to give out a lot of tags and a lot of good success rate too. I mean, I got a tag back in 2007. I was like 12 years old.
That was a phenomenal time.
It was.
There were a lot of good bulls around.
We went after him hard that week. We didn't get one, but the next year my dad got a tag and he got a really nice bull that year. But there was a lot of bulls around.
What zone did you get?
It was E2.
Okay.
Yeah,
yep.
so my family has a camp up in Island Pond. So,
gotcha.
So it's handy up there. We stay right there, but my dad got a nice bull the next year. But yeah, those days
the gun
were awesome.
season can be tough up there because they're out of the rut a lot more than the ones down here are.
Really? It's
like
a big transition from there to here?
Yeah, yep. I mean, last year I noticed that I was guiding a guy, and that gun season, it was really slow. Like, I could get some bulls to grunt back to me, and they'd they'd come into within a couple hundred yards, and then they would just shut up and they would just go away.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any hard charging, like they do during archery season, come right in, grunt every step.
Yep.
It seemed like those bulls were out of the rut really quick up north last year. And when I was hunting down south here, man, I could call in a bull and he would come charging in like it was October 1st.
Yeah.
And it'd be the end of October.
Just slower.
I just think there were less moose, and it was just harder for them to get around, and they were always looking for cows. They had to extend the rut, or else they would never
right in the
breed
season.
enough cows.
And it's probably cooler down here too, so maybe that would extend the.
It was just there's more moose in Massachusetts than there are in southern Vermont now.
Do they give any tags in Mass, or have they ever?
I don't believe you'll ever be able to hunt moose in Mass.
No, even if there's a problem.
They could be hitting them with cars every day, and they'd probably never open a season.
Yes, I've heard down around the Quabbins infested with them.
Big ones too.
Yeah,
there's some good ones down there. Yeah.
They're cool animals. Such cool animals to watch and
big,
stuff.
Big dumb animals.
Part of the cool part of going to Maine is just seeing moose all over the place. It's so cool to just watch them sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that soaked up most of my September and October. Was hunting elk and moose. Yeah. And then I'd jump into I'd have cameras out obviously for deer and stuff, and I would do a lot of spring scouting. But I would mainly jump into the deer hunting for pre-rut once they started making scrapes, and that was my funnest. That's my funnest time to kill them bow hunting. Yep. They respond really well to calls, and they're more predictable. You can find where they're bedding, and you can find those scrapes. They're just on their feet more. Yep. And then it rolls into, while I'm bow hunting, we get snow. Every bit of gear that I have, I'm dumping at the house, putting on wool, grabbing a rifle or a muzzleloader, and hitting the big woods and tracking. Yep. Yep.
So you'd say that's your favorite way to do it?
That's my favorite way to kill a deer.
Oh yeah.
And no question about it is following them on snow.
Yeah.
It is exciting.
No question about it.
It's pretty remarkable though. You're very good. Isaac and I were talking on the way down. Your blend with killing them with a bow and being a tracker, which not a lot of guys can do that. It usually seems like either a really good bow hunter up here or you're a really good tracker.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that are like that specialize in one. I like to do all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd like to say you're one of the only guys that's going down to like public land Jersey, killing deer with a bow, pre-rut, and then coming back up and tracking. And I wanted to ask, do you think bow hunting has made you a better tracker or vice versa? Do you think tracking has made you a better bow hunter? Because
I think you need both. You need to do both. Like I was talking with Jason just the other day, and I was like, I hunted this one buck. We'll take the first big buck I ever killed in Vermont. It's like I hunted that deer for 3 years, and we never got snow the first 2 years. To nothing that you could track him on. Even during rifle season, muzzleloader, if it snowed, it seemed like it rained and it turned to crust, and it was terrible. And I never could find his track if we had any snow, but we never had any good snow to track him on. Like if we got snow, it turned to ice right away. And trail cameras were kind of in their infancy then. I had one camera, and it was a 35 millimeter deal, and I just couldn't seem to get his picture. But I knew where the deer was summering, and then I knew where he was hanging out in the fall, and I knew how the does were bedding in that chunk, and I was trying to cut him off in funnels and stuff. And the year that I killed him, it was really cold, and I was able to take a lot of time off to try to kill him that year because I knew how big he was. I'd seen him in the summer in velvet, and I'm like, man, that deer's 130 or better, and he's huge. I've been hunting him 3 years. I got to put the effort in to try to kill him. So I threw all the chips on the table, and I just hunted that deer all rifle season. And I think I sat in a tree stand dark to dark at least 12 days out of the rifle season, trying to kill that deer different ways, going in 2 hours before daylight and sitting all day in spots or moving. Never even saw him out of a tree. Passed a couple small bucks, and it got to be muzzleloader season, still no snow, nothing. And I told everybody, I'm like, if I could get snow on the ground, that deer's dead. I know so much about him as far as he's a big body deer, so I could see his track. He had rubs the size of my thigh. And I'm like, he's just not moving in daylight. I could probably still hunt in there on bare ground and jump him, but the last thing I want to do is jump him and then hear a shot down off the hill, someone else shoots him. It's national forest. Mm-hmm. Anybody could be in there. So it got to be the day before the last day of muzzleloader season. I wake up, it's the last day of muzzleloader season at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there's 4 inches of snow on the ground, and it's snowing wicked hard. And I'm like, he's dead. I'm gonna go. All I gotta do is find his track. I got all day. The last day, like no pressure, right? Yeah, no pressure. Last day of muzzleloader season, bottom of the 9th.
Yep.
So I just get all my gear together. I get in the truck and I start driving roads. And I'm like, I'm going to drive roads until daylight. Because if I can cut it, because it's snowing almost an inch an hour. I'm like, if I can cut his track crossing the road, at least I know what block he's in. Because there's 2 or 3 roads that cut this big chunk into pieces. But if I could just find his track crossing, if I don't find his track crossing, then I got to gamble. And I got to try to walk into which one I think he's going to be in and try to cut his track or try to jump him. And the deer's getting on his feet before the day's over. I'm going to try to, I've got all day. So I'm driving around that block, and it's like the 3rd or 4th time I've driven around. It's about an hour before daylight. And I'm getting to one of the spots where I knew he crossed the road, and there is a deer going across the road in the headlights, and it's snowing so hard I can't really see until I get right up there 20 yards, and it's him.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there in the truck, and I'm like, this is the first time I've ever seen that deer hard-horned. And here he is right in front of me with 6 inches of snow on the ground. And he's headed into the perfect side that I want him on, big block of timber. I know that wood's like the back of my hand. I just watched him walk right across the road and down over the bank. And I was just like, I know what I'm doing at daylight. So I just parked the truck and I just waited there. And by the time it got daylight, it was just dimples in the snow, but I could tell where he was going.
Yep.
And I followed that deer right down into a river bottom, right by a stand that I'd sat in, I don't know how many days, but he was by it, probably a half hour before daylight. So I could have been sitting in that stand some of those days in bare ground. He walked right by in dark. It's just that deer just wasn't moving in daylight. He just wasn't messing up. And followed him by that stand, crossed that river, and he went right up on the other side. And there was a finger that I was looking at on a map. And back in that days, it was a paper map. It wasn't like I had Onyx on my phone, And I'm just like, I had that finger. I had a big red circle on it. I'm like, he's bedding on that finger. And there was no good way to really approach it to try to hunt that finger. And I, like you were saying earlier, I didn't want to go in there and try to pressure the bed and booger that deer. It's like I could get snow. I could get the right conditions to kill him. I could catch him chasing a doe. I didn't dare get that aggressive with him.
Right.
But I followed his track right up on that mountain, and he's heading right for that finger. And it's like I'm slowing right down. There he is, dig some ferns on the bank, and I'm like, he's getting ready to bed. He's going to bed on that finger. I'm within 300 yards of him. And he's, digs ferns. You see the antler marks in the snow and everything. It's like that just gets you so fired up.
That's the best.
It's like
the adrenaline starts pumping.
Man, it's like, yeah, look at how big he is. And followed him up on that hill, and his steps are really close together. And I get onto that finger, and I can see his track going ahead of me. And it's like it's kind of wide open hemlocks in front of me on the top of that bench, and I can see his track just going straight ahead of me, and I just caught something to my right, and it was him just standing up out of his bed, like 35 yards on my right. And he just kind of stood up out of his bed and just looked my direction. Boom! And it was just a big cloud of smoke, and he takes off running. Pretty sure I was right on him. I'm like, did I just kill him? Did I just kill that buck?
Yeah.
So I'm I'm 20 years old, reloading that muzzleloader. I'm all wound up. I'm like, hopefully I didn't miss. I was right. It was 30 yards. How could I miss him? And I run down there, and there's just 2 pinches of hair in the bed, one on each side of where he was standing. I'm like, solid body hit.
Yep.
I got him, and I walked like 10 yards on his track where he was running, and I can see him dead right at the bottom of the hill.
Wow.
And it was just that deer will always be one of my best deer. Because it was my first big one. And it was my first good one to ever shoot track. And that's the one that weighed 192.
The last day
muzzleloader. Yeah.
Giant.
Yeah.
Definitely.
He had real heavy horns and little itty bitty brow tines, but had 11-inch G2s on him. Just a hammer.
I think I've seen the picture somewhere, probably Facebook. But it looks like
it's a 35 millimeter.
It looks like you're in a winter wonderland holding them.
Yeah.
Like it's just snow everywhere.
Yeah.
I've seen the picture.
It was a perfect day to kill him.
Yep.
Perfect day. And that long drag out, it was the whole experience. I was just like, I'm gonna do this more.
That's what hooked you right there.
I need to hunt the whole season and not shoot a little buck.
Yep.
Because if I get one day like this,
yep.
Look at what I can kill.
Yep.
Killing days.
And it's just getting that. That's when it really started to click.
Right.
Like, find those big bucks and then, wait for the right conditions to kill them. So that's why my game plan now is bow hunting Mass because it's close.
Yep.
And hunting on bare ground down there because it's only bow season all through the rut.
Yep.
And then, man, we get snow on the ground. I know where there's some bucks. I'm going to go find them.
Right.
And then I go to Vermont and I find one.
So you get to hunt all season.
Yeah.
And I mean, you said you haven't hunted Vermont much with the bow, but my opinion is a lot of these big bucks around here are so unpatternable.
Well, there's
Like,
food everywhere.
There's food everywhere. It's a different kind of deer than you're hunting in Massachusetts.
Yep,
You know,
absolutely.
down there you can hunt a big old community scrape that they might hit, you know, they might daylight the end of October or beginning of November, where it's like around here.
Well, our bow season was over.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that too.
That was the other thing. It was
It
like
ended.
This buck
Yeah.
was making scrapes right at daylight.
No kidding.
And there was no deer season in Vermont.
Yeah, because it ended the last week of October,
It ended
right?
the end of moose season.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
24th or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And you couldn't hunt again until rifle season.
Exactly.
It was
yeah.
a week, you season,
So there was
week, and then rifle.
We're the only state in the country
Right.
Yeah.
that wasn't hunting deer during the pre-rut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insane.
Yep. And now we go
So
through.
That's the big reason why I was just like, man, I'm gonna guide moose, and then I'm gonna just wait until it's the pre-rut, and I'm gonna go hunt
Yep.
New Jersey, or I'm gonna hunt Massachusetts, and then wait for snow. Even if I only get the snow in muzzleloader season,
Yep.
you know, because you just need that one good day.
That's all it takes.
That's
One
all it
killing
takes,
day,
you
man.
know. And the more deer that I track, the better I got at it. And if I killed that first one, he was standing still. But you notice that as you're progressing and you're tracking, a lot of guys will shoot running deer like a lot of the time. And then as you get better at tracking, you start shooting them in their beds. You start shooting them as they're standing out of their bed. You start shooting them standing still. Like you start catching them instead of going too fast and bumping them in their beds. And you just get to know what to look for.
Yeah.
Like knowing when to slow down.
Yeah.
That's the
It's
big
You
one.
learn the
all
finesse
this-
part
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
you know?
When I started, I wasn't shooting at running deer. I was walking up the beds with running tracks coming out.
Yeah,
of them.
or you start there.
Yeah,
and then
that's right.
then if you do get a shot, it's like it's a
I
quick
did
running
that
shot,
a
and it's like,
lot.
man, I should have caught him standing there.
Yeah.
I was looking this way, and he was standing. It's but it's the funnest.
It's a
game.
rush, man.
It's the funnest game there is for deer
It
hunting.
is.
can't beat
It's a
it.
cat
You
and mouse. Is
For
nothing
me, it's
better.
it's the best thing
It
there is.
Anybody that's able-bodied, you got to try it.
Yeah,
You got
It's the most challenging, but the most fun for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to guys from the Midwest, and they just can't even wrap their head around it. They're just like,
Yeah,
well,
they're
how do you keep the wind in your favor? How do you don't pay attention?
It's a whole different ballgame.
You don't pay
You don't
attention
think about
to
the wind, man.
Yeah.
You're
You
just-
don't pay attention to the wind at all. Well, I don't see how you can stay scent free. Walking around, you're sweating like that. Like you don't.
You don't,
It's just
yeah.
like elk hunting. I'm not staying scent free. I'm constantly paying attention to the thermals. And
Oh, yeah.
it's a chess match, and you got to pay attention to where your wind's going. And following those big woods deer though, and then you see when they start pawing for ferns and they start slowing down. You see the antler marks in the snow, and man, you can just tell he's slowing down and he's right there bedded. It's like you are never more on edge than you are right there.
Yep.
Hair on the back of your neck, standing right up, ready
It's
to go.
wicked. It's anyone that's done it knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
It's-
Yep.
Very addicting.
For sure.
Let's circle back real quick to you said that buck that was making scrapes that you said you could have killed if the season was still open.
I would have been able to hunt him.
So-
put it that way.
That buck, I want to talk about that buck
Yeah.
because I remember when I was younger seeing a picture of that buck,
Yeah,
and we'll put a picture on the Instagram page.
yeah.
This thing is a giant, or
Yeah.
was a giant.
Yeah.
He was just an
He's
absolute.
been dead for a long time now, but
I would like to know everything about that deer because
well, this deer, coincidentally, was this deer actually. I found him the year after I killed that deer that I was just telling you guys about. That one, my first big buck tracking.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
I shot that buck, and there was a woman that was delivering newspapers in that area in my town, and everyone saw that buck that I killed.
Yep.
It's a small town.
Yep.
And she came up to me like, it had to have been around after Christmas week or whatever, and she's like, "You killed a really good buck, but there's a bigger one on the other side of the valley." I'm like, "Oh yeah, really?" So I was like, "Well, how much bigger?" I don't know. He's got more points, and his antlers look heavier. I'm just like, "Really? Okay, well that's a cool tip."
Yeah.
I kind of just whatever. I just people see deer and they think they're way bigger than they are. I just
Right.
kind of brush that off, whatever. Well, in the spring when I was shed hunting, there was an orchard on the other side of that valley, and I walked over there and it was full of deer sign. Well, I found that antler, and I was just like, well, yeah.
My lady wasn't lying.
He was bigger if that's the deer she saw, and I couldn't find the other side. And that's when I had that one trail camera and get to be after moose season. I had it in there underneath some apple trees just trying to get pictures of deer for inventory, see if there were any good bucks in there in October. And got to be the end of moose season. I went in there and there were some scrapes, so I moved that camera around, put it right on a big primary scrape, real good licking branch.
Yep.
Well, it snowed that night, and I went by the next day, and there were tracks everywhere on that orchard. So I'm like, I'm going to walk in there and see if anything, because I've only got, it's a 35 millimeter camera. So I'm like, I probably used up all the film. You know, you don't have a card in it. I got to run to Walmart for 1 hour photo, you know. So I run in there to the camera, and there's tracks everywhere in front of it, and that scrape is just ripped apart. And there is a track in there, you know, of a monster buck.
Yep.
So I'm just like, pulled the film out of there, put a new one in, got back to the truck, drove to Walmart, and I'm 1 hour photo. I'm just pacing back and forth with the photo booth. And the woman, the photos are coming out of the machine, you know, and she's over there, and she's seen me develop photos before, you know, so she knows exactly why I'm waiting there. And she's like, oh boy, you're really going to like these. And I'm just like, just hand them to me as they're coming out of there. You're like killing me. Yeah. And she handed me the handful of pictures, and he was like right on top, you know, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that is a buck. And
he was like a 170 at that point.
He was,
right?
The set of antlers that he had in that picture, we scored, and he was just under 160.
And that's with no brow tines, basically.
That's with one brow tine.
One brow tine. Yeah. One tiny little brow tine.
One little tiny
like a 1 inch brow tine.
Yeah, it's just like a little teeny pinch. Yeah.
He's a monster.
He's a monster
of a buck. And I remember I saw the photo somewhere when I was younger.
He's got a 14-inch G3 on his left side.
Just a giant.
Yeah.
And then you continued to hunt him, I assume. Yeah.
Never laid eyes on him.
Never laid eyes on him.
Never laid eyes on him. I tracked him one day, and he went right out of that valley, right up into the huge block of national forest, and it was snowing so hard that day I lost his track. And he was headed to the yard is what he was doing, because where I found his shed, the only reason he shed there was because we at the end of muzzleloader season that year. Granted, he was alive the year that I killed that big buck on the other side of the valley.
Yep.
So he was over there killable in that orchard, and I didn't even know about him.
Right.
But the deer didn't live there. He was just over there messing with the does pre-rut, because some of them does, I think, came in early, like the beginning of November, right around in that valley, and he was just over there messing with them. Other than that, he was 15 miles away from there. That's where we found every other antler, 15 miles from there.
Really?
Straight line on a map. That's not contour. 15 miles as a crow flies.
So about 30 in the woods.
Yeah.
Like probably.
So that gives you a good idea how far deer travel and migrate. This deer was a big time traveler and migrator.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think you found a lot of sign of that deer, like rubs, scrapes? Like
I think all the rubs that he made in there were when he was locked in there post-rut.
Right, so you never...
there was like a dozen does in there with him.
Right, so you never like found his like little area he had
no.
or a rub line?
The next year when I got pictures of him, I got that one picture of him in there pre-rut in that scrape. Mm-hmm. I didn't get another picture of him for like 5 or 6 days, and then boom, he'd stroll through there. He had a pretty big circuit.
Could have, yeah.
And I don't know what he was doing.
Right, big wanderer.
I never had enough cameras to try to put anything together.
Right. And
I never got enough snow to really get on him. I just didn't get the snow those few years, and that's what really because if I can't figure him out with cameras, I got to have snow on the ground.
Yeah.
And when I can combine the two, and I can combine spring scouting, and then I can find some sheds, and then I can track him once or twice on snow.
Right.
Boy, I've got that deer's number. I can start to really figure out how to kill him. But that deer, and I was young to it too.
Right.
I was just starting to really want to kill a big deer. I mean,
what year
I'd
was
love
that
to have.
You said you had a 35 mil, so
yeah, that was. I'd have to look. Well, it was 23 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
That was 99.
That was a while ago. 23 years ago.
99.
Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, I have a theory that just some big bucks are just truly nomadic in the North Country, like in New England.
Yeah, that would have been a hell of a deer to have a collar on.
Yes, because like the biggest buck I ever hunted in Vermont was like a mid to high 140s 8-pointer with no brow tines, just a giant. And it didn't matter how far I went, how much I looked, how many cameras I put out. I'd only get one picture a year of him on this one ridge.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's big country. I just think that deer just went where he went. He went where he went. Like he didn't have no set Nothing was.
If that deer got killed by a hunter, it was a hunter that knew nothing about him.
Yeah, exactly.
It's how that deer's going to die, or he's going to die of old age.
And same thing with that deer, except for you had some sheds of them and stuff. But I'm figuring he was probably a nomadic creature, kind of like. And I think sometimes the nomadic ones are the ones that get the biggest, because they're almost in a way unkillable. Yeah. They're not in a, like you said, the big one you killed. You kind of knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You watched him all summer.
I killed him. I killed him
bedding.
3 miles from where he was summering.
There you go.
Yep.
So I mean, he got big with some luck on his side.
Yep.
Because you had his number.
Yep.
A buck like that, you can't have You can't have his number because he doesn't have a number.
Yeah.
He just does whatever he wants.
Yeah. It would be a luck of circumstance to have the right snow when you could cut his track
fresh enough,
and it to be him. Because he just simply wasn't a homebody anywhere. And where he headed between where I was getting the pictures of him in that orchard and where he ended up shedding his antlers 15 miles in a straight line, he's only crossing 2 roads.
Right, yeah.
So that's how big of a block of timber it is. He's only crossing 2 roads that are drivable.
Right.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, that's huge woods, beaver swamps.
Yeah.
I mean, nasty.
Yep.
And, I think a buck like
Huge
that, too,
country.
is rare because most of the times I think your bigger bucks are going to end up in your best habitat, which tends to be around the edges of those big chunks.
Yeah.
Where it's like him, he just wanted to be alone out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet when he was in Velvet, that's where he was hanging out.
Just nowhere.
Yeah.
Middle of nowhere. Yeah. Like 3 miles from the road.
Because when that woman saw him, she saw him the exact same time. I think it was during that snowstorm that I killed the other buck in.
Coming out.
Yeah.
He was headed out.
She saw him. He was around that orchard probably messing around with those does.
It does get my imagination going, though.
It does.
Thinking about all those big nomadic bucks that just don't
and you never
out,
find
man.
their sheds because you're in a chunk of woods that you're never going to go shed hunting in.
Right.
And sheds only last a few years.
Yeah.
And then they're gone. There's all the evidence gone.
And you're not going to put cameras out there because there's no deer.
Yeah. I mean, I started getting, that's where I really started getting my best pictures of bucks in Vermont was I was trying to get moose pictures, and I was around clear cuts in the summertime, and I'd get big velvet bucks.
Yeah.
Camera was there for 2 months. I got his picture once. And he was like a 130s, 140 buck in full velvet, and it's just like, that deer doesn't live anywhere near there. But how far is he traveling in velvet? But never got another picture of him. Put other cameras in there trying to find him, never could see him again. It's just like, how many deer are like that? They just
probably
are
more
ghosts.
than we think.
There's a lot. You always hear people that are always like, "Oh, I got this. You got to see this picture. I just got this the one picture," and then they're sitting in that area for their whole season. And they're never gonna see that buck.
They kill a whole season.
It's crazy.
Brutal.
I mean, have you heard of the study of the buck? I want to say it was Missouri. They collared him, and he did 180 miles straight line.
Yeah.
During the route, 180. And then there was a similar study done in New Hampshire where a buck did like 100 miles.
Yeah.
Like cross 50 something paved roads, like all these numbers. It's like that really makes you think. Okay, we really don't know everything about these things.
It's just personalities. Some they're all different.
It throws you for a loop because you got the ones that are homebodies, and it's just like people. You got people that don't want to sit on their couch all day, and you got people that want to hike a mountain.
You got some that don't want to ever sit still. But
you got some bucks that tear up trees everywhere they go, and some bucks, like I was telling you earlier, barely rub a tree at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they all got their own unique personality. I would have learned a lot about this deer if I'd have had a collar on him.
For sure.
Just to figure out where he was some days, what he was doing to survive, and was he in the middle of nowhere most of the time,
or was he in a backyard?
Was he right looking in someone's picture window? In the goofiest spot you can think of.
It always seems like those nomadic bucks, kind of like you said, they'll just get killed on a whim, random one day. Just a guy, I parked the truck 100 yards up in the woods,
walking
and
up a log road.
It's usually a new hunter.
Yeah,
it is. It seems like
walking into an oddball spot where there's never any human scent. That's why that buck's in there.
Of course.
Seems how they die sometimes.
They're cool. That's the buck though that you're just hoping you're in that big chunk of woods. You cut his track.
Right.
And you've never seen him a day in your life, but he's a monster. So that's why when I get snow, that's why I head back to that big chunk of woods, because I'm just like, there's got to be other bucks like him in there.
Yeah, he's for sure.
So is that your biggest buck you've ever messed around with in Vermont?
That's the biggest buck that I've ever hunted.
Yeah,
that I knew existed.
Very impressive
in Vermont.
animal.
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
I haven't been able to find one
since.
since.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And I mean, that could be like
a lot of 130s, up to, my biggest in Vermont was mid 140s. And I hunted that deer for 3 years. He was an awesome buck.
So you drew the coveted Iowa tag this year.
Yeah.
How many years have you been trying?
5.
5 years.
5 points.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll see.
So what's your plan? Take us through it.
Well, the zone I drew, I've got covered in waypoints, access points and possible ways to, to access different pinch points that I'm looking at. And I've got a rooftop tent that I'm going to put on my truck, shower kit and everything. I'm going to be totally self-contained in my vehicle, no hotel room, anything like that, so I can sleep right at the access point if I want. Mm-hmm. I just plan on putting the time in and staying until I kill one.
So you're going to
go out right around 25th. I'm probably going to hunt pre-rut in Mass a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to get out there probably around the 25th through the 30th, somewhere around there. And I'm going to stay until the end of November if that's what it takes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a dream.
Well, I mean, I want to kill the biggest I'm going to try to kill the biggest buck of my life.
Yeah, what's your minimum you're going to hold out for?
I want to try to shoot something 150 plus. I mean, I really should. I
really
should.
Yeah,
I should really try to shoot a 5-year-old buck.
You know what's funny? You probably shoot one the first day.
I could. And then I'm going to tell you, with all the scouting that I've got done in Mass, they're in serious trouble.
Right.
Yeah, if I'm back here by mid-November, that would be cool. Because the ultimate season, this would be the ultimate season this year. I go to Colorado. Me and a couple buddies, we shoot a few beautiful public land bull elk with a bow. Yep. I come back here. I shoot a big bear maybe in the beginning of October or whatever. I'm not really taking bow hunting that serious in the beginning of October, but pre-rut, I'm going to hunt Mass a little bit, try to shoot a couple of my target bucks that I had from last year I know are still alive, and I think I can kill them pre-rut when they're starting working those scrapes because I got their bedding area kind of dialed. So yeah, kill some bull elk in Colorado, come back, try to shoot a buck in Mass. If not, go to Iowa, spend the whole month of November if that's what it takes, and then come back, hunt Mass, and chase snow.
That's a season.
That's the game plan. And I'm working 60, 70 hours a week all summer long to do it. My boat doesn't even have a sticker on it this year. I haven't done any fishing. I haven't done anything. I'm just working my tail off and saving money, and I'm going to do it.
That's awesome.
I'm going to go out there. I want to just be mobile, move around all by myself, and see if I can shoot a giant. I mean, there's 200-inch deer running around out there. I mean,
got faith.
Wouldn't that be unbelievable killing a deer like that?
It would.
I mean, it's going to take me 5 more years to ever go back there.
At least
5 years. Who knows what can happen in 5 years? So it's like I might as well really
go for it.
I'm not going for a 6-day hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I might. Yep. I might only be there 6 days. But there's a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot of public land. And I got a lot of waypoints to check out. So my game plan is to get there, roll in first 3 or 4 days, scouting, hopping around to all those waypoints that I got, all the spots of interest that I want to check out. And I'm going to take a kayak with me so I can do water access if I need to in some spots. And, talking to some wardens out there. I've been calling out there, talking to some of them, and they're right in they're pretty optimistic. They're like, man, if you're willing to put in that much effort, there's some really good deer to be killed on public out here.
No kidding.
Just got to do what others don't.
Right. Yeah.
I figured if I got out there the end of October, I get all that scouting in, I should have found some really good deer, found some really good pinch points, and then, boy, it rolls into that November 10th.
Yep. Game time.
You never know what's going to come rolling through a funnel on November 10th through the 15th. It could be a giant, an absolute
world class.
Yeah, world class giant.
World class. Yeah.
So that's what I'm shooting for.
So I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
You'll have to keep me updated.
I'm excited. That's what I think about all day long. I take measurements for trim and stuff, and then I can hardly remember my numbers by the time I get back to the saw. I'm thinking about bull elk and big bucks, and that's what it's all about, man. You gotta pay to play. So
and you got some Midwest experience. Right?
I hunted Ohio quite a bit.
Yeah, knock
on doors.
Yeah,
type permission. Go out in the spring. I'd go out in the spring and I'd chat with some farmers, give them a quart, half gallon of maple syrup, whatever. And, handshake, and I could hunt, and then all of a sudden it was like one year I went out and everything was leased up. So everything's leased up now in the Midwest. It's real tough. So I kind of went from the Midwest to concentrating back here on public and hunting, big woods deer again. Because my game plan when I was scouting moose and guiding moose a lot is I was spending a lot of my time scouting for moose in October. So I would maybe hop down to Jersey, hunt that public ground, and then I would scoot out there to Ohio, and I would hunt out there until Thanksgiving. And then I would get home at Thanksgiving, and it was like, that's when we're starting to get snow. And then I'd go tracking deer.
Yep. It's a hell of a plan.
Yeah.
It's worked out for you.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, once it gets to be Thanksgiving, that's really when I'm just, like, chomping at the bit for some tracking snow.
Yep. So your plan is Iowa whole month of November?
If necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, you might run into some snow out there, too. I mean, it's a whole different ballgame out there.
We're going to run into rain. I'm going to run into
yeah.
heat. I'm going to run into everything.
What are you going to eat?
I'm gonna take a pile of freeze dried food with me, but I mean I can go to a store and
right
get whatever.
Are you gonna get like
I've got
grill?
a dough tag.
Okay.
Hey, you can eat that.
I'm gonna have a dough tag. I'm
Right.
gonna have a
Canned
grill.
meat, little canned
I'm gonna
meat.
shoot a dough and I'll eat
Cook
her
her
before
up.
I get home. I don't know. As long as I got butter and venison and a flame, I'm
Heck
good.
yeah.
Are you gonna be doing any filming at all when you're out there?
I don't know.
Or you don't even want to bother with it?
I've got the only filming I plan on doing is when I get one dead or
Yep.
stories along
Okay.
the way with a cell phone.
Yep.
I'm toying back and forth with the idea of getting a GoPro or something simple.
You should.
Yeah.
You should.
Just to document the trip.
It's so simple to film with them, man.
Yeah.
That's
one
gonna
button.
be
And it's 4K.
Yeah.
It's good
Yeah, I'll
stuff.
probably do something like that to document the trip. And
that's gonna be a core
'Cause
memory
that-
for you right there.
yeah.
You can cut up GoPro footage and make some cinematic stuff.
Yeah.
Like this stuff's like
I've just spent thousands and thousands of hours editing footage in my life, so I'm just like, just like someone else to edit it.
Yep.
If I'm gonna
It
do
does
something
take
like
up some
that,
time.
it's just like I've spent so many hours editing video footage and adding music to it, and
Yep.
doing. I mean, I don't have to do it that extreme. I
Right.
could just cut it up and just have it be a
good, yeah.
here it is video, whatever.
Yeah,
but,
simple.
But
Yeah, the stuff you have on YouTube is very high quality.
yeah.
The In Pursuit 365.
There's
I don't know.
probably-
I don't know if we've mentioned the name yet, but that's your channel on YouTube.
Yeah, In Pursuit 365.
The production quality is top notch.
There's probably 5 hours for every 5 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
For editing,
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. I had a lot of fun in all those years. That was a lot of fun videoing.
Yeah.
You got to be committed to that too. It's just like tracking.
yeah.
You got to be committed. If you're gonna do
gave
the
up
video,
a lot of
man,
opportunities.
It's tough. A lot of guys can't do that.
And not being able to set up, like bow hunting, not being able to set up in the right tree, trying to video, it's like that's the tree to kill the deer out of, but I can't hide 2 guys in it.
Yep.
So it's like you're
It's another layer.
Yeah.
It is.
It's another layer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing to get in the way, really, if you think about it. And you were doing that way before anybody else was too, which is awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff there.
With the old GL2 with the tapes.
Oh, really? You were
Yeah,
taping everything.
That was my first camera. Was a GL2.
Wow.
I believe it was that. Whatever one took the small cassette tapes.
Yeah.
Instead of a card.
Yeah, I remember those.
So
Growing up.
when you'd go to edit it, you had to put it onto the editing system, and it was all real time.
Mm-hmm.
You had to sit there and it had to play
Yeah.
all real time to get it onto the hard drive.
Oh
so yeah,
my
you go through
gosh.
hours of footage. You got hours that it had to play to get it on.
Wow.
And right now it's just a push of a button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pop the SD card in, get the editing.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to switch gears a little bit here. I want to get the story on this massive 5-pointer you got this year, because I saw that picture. You and, was it Justin? He got a big 5-pointer.
Brandon
Sorry,
Langlos.
my bad.
Langlos.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, that was
You
a hell of
both
a
got
day.
big 5-pointers, right?
Mhm.
What's the
Well,
story?
his
on this?
was classified as a 6. Had a
Oh, did
one
it?
brow tine was 1 inch.
Oh, I probably
But I mean
would've
that
called
deer was a 158 pointer,
Yep.
like in his prime.
Yep.
He was old. He's 8.5.
Yep. How old was the one you got?
This one was 6.5.
You hunted that one for multiple years as well?
Nope. This one
is
was
fresh one?
the first time that I ever knew this deer was alive was very last day of October.
Really?
Yeah.
Want to take us through that whole story then?
Yeah.
Take us through that hunt?
Yeah. It was. I was really in there hunting a big 10, and he's got a frame similar to that, but he's a 10-point, and that's my number 1 target buck this year. But I was trying to kill that 10, and I was putting cameras on different pinch points and funnels, and it's on scrapes, and I had tons of pictures of that 10. Well, all of a sudden, this 5 shows up, and he's working a scrape, and then he's running through a different funnel, and I don't see that 10 anymore. The 10 was like gone. Well, this buck was covered in scars from head to toe. I've never seen a deer so beat up. This deer was a bully.
Really?
He came into that area, and he kind of pushed a lot of those other bucks out of there. That 10 especially. I don't know. There was another 8-point that was in there off and on. I would see them at the scrape maybe an hour apart or whatever. But that 10, I didn't see him very much once this deer showed up. And I got one really good video clip of him working a scrape and then running by the camera, and he's like mouth wide open, grunting the whole way. And then you can hear him. The doe runs in front of the camera like an hour later, and you can just hear him walking behind the camera, brr, 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 just grunting. He was just on his feet that last day of October, first day of November, and I wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So I was playing cat and mouse for them, trying to kill him with a bow, and I was just never in the right spot at the right time. There were 3 or 4 good funnels around there that I could kill him in, and man, I would go check a camera because I don't have any cell service there, so there's no cell cams going on there, nothing. Cool. I would go check a camera on a Sunday, and I was like, oh shit, I was 500 yards from him, and there he is, daylight, walking right through 8:30 in the morning, and it was just a matter of time before I finally got him. Mm-hmm. Our paths were bound to cross eventually, and I shot that deer in Vermont on Saturday. And we got some snow. Well, down there we only got a dusting of snow. So I killed that deer and I went down there on that Sunday and that next Monday was the first day of mass shotgun season. I went down there and walked around, and I found where I believe he walked through, and there was a little teeny pinch point on the edge of this bank, and it had like a clear cut that came up through a corner. And there were a couple small rubs through there like the size of my finger, but there was a really big track walking through there, and I'm like, I bet you this is how that buck, and then I started laying it out on a map, and I'm like, man, I'm getting pictures of him over here, and that pinch point is right in the dead center of everything. That's where I should have been sitting. And the wind that I'm going to get tomorrow, that's the place I got a great access. I can walk up a creek, and I can come right in the corner of that cut, and I can just barely step into the woods and be right in that funnel. I'm going to be right there tomorrow morning. I went in there on Sunday and hung the stand, and I was going in there to hunt the first day. And it was before, I was getting in there before light, and it was nice, quiet walking up that brook. And I'm just getting into the stand, and it's just starting to crack light, and my phone vibrates in my pocket, and it's Brandon texting me. He's like, dude, I just killed that giant. And I'm in wicked thick spruce, and there's no real snow on the ground now as it is. And I'm like, man, it's dark in here. And I'm like, oh, he's on the top of a hardwood ridge. It's probably like daylight. And I know where he is. It's high elevation. He's got snow on the ground. I'm just like, you sure it's him? He's like, it's a monster. So he was all wound up. So I was texting back and forth. And then my phone wouldn't work anymore. I'm like, whatever. I'm amazed that the text even went through. But I think it's because I'm like 20 feet in the air. I just had enough service. So I'm sitting there, and a doe comes down through that funnel. And she'd walk like 15, 20 yards, and she'd turn around and walk and look right back where she came from. And her tail's like halfway up, all nervous. Yep. Walk a little bit more, and she walked all the way right by me. And every 15, 20 steps, she'd turn around and look back where she came from. And I'm like, I'm either going to shoot a coyote or a big buck. There's something harassing her, It was like 35, 40 minutes later, he came strolling through. And the way the wind was blowing, he was just downwind of her track, just taking his time, and he was just keeping track of her, but he wasn't like dogging her track. He was just downwind of her track, just walking. I shot him at 9:00 in the morning.
Jeez.
And I think I screwed up that day. I should have doubled up and shot another buck. There was another deer right behind him, but as soon as I saw him, I never looked anywhere else. It was just like tunnel vision right on him. I'm like, that's the big five. Yeah. And I was just like, look at how wide that deer is, and he walked into an opening, boom, 40 yards. I shot him, and as he's running down through, I can see the blood pouring out of him, and that other deer, I can see it running off to my left, and I never even looked at it. Well, I mean, that deer had a wicked track.
I wonder if it was that 10.
It was not that 10. I think it was a big white 8, because I looked at the other end of the piece of woods, and that there was a big white 8 on the camera in daylight that same morning. I'm like, I guarantee you those 2 bucks were following that doe. But that was the deer that I wanted to kill. That made my season.
It's a giant.
That was the deer I wanted to kill.
And I
just because I was curious how old he was. I was amazed he was only 6.5, because I was like, wouldn't it be cool if he was like 9?
How long of main beams does he have on him?
I don't know about his. I've never scored him, but he's 24 inside.
Yeah.
I bet you the main beams are all of 23.5, 24 probably.
They're just long and big.
Yeah, they're big.
Banana out at the end, and jeez.
He just looks so cool.
It is, yeah.
Oh, he's a cool buck.
He's just a really unique.
Love the character. I'd love to kill. I'd rather kill a big 5-pointer like that over like a 120-inch like 10.
Yeah, just like a perfectly symmetrical.
Yeah, no, I'd rather something like this. Like
he's just got a lot of character.
Yeah, a lot of character.
and he was old, and he's on a super heavily hunted block of public, and it's
smart
to kill a buck 6.5 years old on that public, man.
That's awesome.
I was pretty satisfied, man. It's a great feeling.
Did you weigh him?
Yeah, he would 187.
It's a good buck.
Yeah, good math buck.
For for the very end of November, and he was just beat to hell, rutted out big time.
Yeah. You said he was the fighter in the group? He was
scarred
from
head to toe. I mean, I don't even think. I mean, the cape would have looked absolutely ridiculous.
Really, just punctures.
It looked like a bear attacked him because he was so wide. I think when he was fighting a lot of deer, he was just loaded with tine marks right between his ears, all the way down the back of his neck, and then his whole body, all the way down to the base of his tail. He was just big patches of hair missing.
Yeah. I was thinking that when you were saying that, his head and neck must have just been absolutely
destroyed.
destroyed.
Every other deer just fit right in between the main beams there.
Yeah.
Because,
I'm surprised he's not blind. I'm surprised he wasn't blind, really. But
yeah.
He's got no brow tines to protect him down
there.
Yeah,
he didn't lose an eye. He didn't have any eye guards, but, man, he loved to rub trees. That his antlers that day were just like right full of bark.
Just packed in there. Yeah. Awesome.
And they're wicked smooth. So
what a giant.
He's pretty white out here, too. He's been polishing them off.
He was a cool deer. Really, really gray face on him, real light colored.
Yep.
As soon as I saw him walking, I didn't even see his antlers. As soon as I saw him walking, I'm like, that's a 5+-year-old buck right there. As soon as I could see the deer, the body, and I got the gun ready, and he walked through that one opening, and I see that huge fork on his right side. I'm like, oh my God, it's him. And he just looked my direction for 1 second as he was walking. He just looked like he was that wide. He just looked stupid wide in the woods. And I was just like, just hold it together. He's just got to walk in that one opening. He just walked right into that one opening. Perfect. Double lunged him,
Well, that's a heck of a day then. You, Brandon, got one. You almost doubled up.
Yeah. That was the first time I've had 2 bucks hanging in the garage at the same time because I killed the one in Vermont Saturday.
Yeah.
And that one you killed in Vermont was a nice buck, too.
That was a dandy.
Yeah. What did he weigh at?
That deer was 160.
160.
And he's a nice heavy horned 8.
Yeah.
I'll show you guys the antlers.
Yeah, nice buck.
But,
and you got him tracking.
That was tracking. That was a phenomenal day. I was messing around here because it was threatening to snow. So I didn't go to Mass because it was really windy and it was pouring rain. I'm like, I'm not going to sit in a stand in that. I'll go still hunt around here in some spots that I know of because there's some good bucks that I had pictures of. I'll go still hunt in that rain, and then it's going to turn to snow. Tomorrow I'm going to kill one if it can turn to snow because it was supposed to get a lot colder. Progressively throughout the day, it just kept getting colder and colder. So I messed around in that rain, and I got soaked. Came back to the house, and I was telling you guys when you first got here, I get in the house, I get out of my wet clothes, I go over to start some coffee or something. I look out the living room window, and there's a 120 buck chasing a doe around in the field right across the road. I'm standing there in my underwear, and I'm just like, oh, are you kidding me? I got to get on my clothes. So I went through on all dry clothes, get out there, run it, pouring rain. I go down in that back 40 trying to find him. In that he's gone. And there's no snow. I'm like, man, what if there was 2 inches of snow on the ground?
Oh,
He'd
man,
be in trouble. Yeah.
So I'm like, tomorrow's going to be awesome. Bucks are on their feet. Tomorrow's going to be good. Well, I woke up in the mornings, a couple hours before daylight, and I could walk out in the driveway, and I could still see the color of the grass through the snow. And I'm like, I'm not hunting here. Because I know... I talked to my mother, and she lives in Westover, and she's like, there's 6 inches on the deck, easy. And that was at 10 o'clock at night. I'm heading north. So I headed up there, headed into the National Forest there, Sunbury area, and I've had really good luck finding bucks up in there. And I get up in there, there's more and more snow. And I'm driving the road, and there's one truck ahead of me on the access road. And I'm like, man, I usually am the first one here. I'm kind of late. Now there's getting to be so much snow that my truck's dragging in the dead center. I'm like, man, it's knee-deep snow. There's no snow back home, and it's knee-deep here. So I'm buzzing out through there, and I can see the guys getting out and checking every track. And I'm like, man, this is going to be – I'm going to have to cut one that's crossed, or I'm going to have to take a side road that he hasn't. Pretty soon we hadn't cut a track in a while, and there was a couple good swamps that I knew that came up, and I'd killed bucks tracking there in the past. It's a really good crossing. And there's a track crossing all by itself. And I can see before, I was telling my cousins this, I'm like, I could see before I even stopped the truck that it was a deer I wanted to follow. I mean, the deer looks like somebody's going down through the woods with cross-country skis. It's like the deer's got a wicked wide stance, stagger. He's got a wicked wide stagger to his track. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm like, I can see where the guy got out and looked at the track. He got right back in the truck and drove off. And I'm like, I don't know what he didn't like about that track. But Nothing.
Sounds beautiful to
There
me.
is not a thing that I don't like about that track. So I'm like, I bet he went down the road. He probably parked a half mile down the road or something and found a better pull-off. I followed his truck tracks for another mile. He never parked. I wheeled the truck around. I couldn't get back there fast enough. And I parked the truck. I'm like, that's the deer I came here to kill.
Yep.
That's the track I'm looking for. And it was just cracking daylight at that point. I started in. I didn't follow that deer a half mile, and man, he ate some mushrooms off of a log, and there's antler marks.
The best.
You know, and I'm just like, he's got plenty of headgear on his head.
Yeah.
Let's go. This is perfect. And that deer drove me crazy because he would chug right along through that wide open hardwoods, and then he'd get into a beaver slough, and a lot of those deer, it's all mature forest out there, and the best browse is right around the edge of those beaver swamps. Mm-hmm. So he'd get around the edge of those beaver swamps, and he'd slow right down. He'd get into the mature hemlocks, and he'd be pawing for ferns and everything. And I'm like, he's right here. I'm going to kill him. And it was ideal wind that day. It was 25 mile per hour, maybe 30 mile per hour, and almost knee deep snow. It was just like you could shuffle your feet and be dead quiet. It was like, I'm going to kill him right here. He's right here, and he's pawing for ferns, and the snow is just covered in antler marks because the snow is so deep. It's just antler marks surrounding everywhere. He's sticking his nose, and I'm like, oh my God, how big is this buck? You know? Yeah. And pretty soon he'd stop digging ferns, and he'd just get to the end of that beaver slough, and he'd just line right out, and I'd follow him for another half mile through wide open hardwoods, and he's just chugging straight line. I'm like, okay. You're going to come to another one. I know there's a chain of beaver ponds. He'd come to another beaver pond. He'd slow right down. He'd start digging ferns. I'm like, all right, I'm going to kill him in this one. He did that 3 different times. Finally lined out for the third time, and he's headed for the 4th beaver pond. And I'm just like, man, I've got to catch up to him and kill him here eventually. I mean, he's eaten I don't know how many ferns. You know, usually they don't eat a lot like that, and usually when they eat, they bed right up. I get to that next beaver slough, same thing, and I'm going really slow, except this time when he's feeding on ferns, and all of a sudden his track just goes perfectly 90 degrees to the right, and I'm just like, there's a little knob right there that I just didn't quite pay attention to. I bet he was bedded right there, and I walked up there. Yep, there's a blowdown. He was bedded right on the other side of it. I probably never could have seen him. Mm-hmm. He was just bedded in a perfect spot, and he could see me as soon as I entered that beaver slough at 80 yards. So he had me pegged in that first setup. He had it laid out perfect. Mm-hmm. The decision that killed that deer was me standing there at that bed for 30 minutes. I stood there and I laid the rifle in his bed, and I'm like, that's a good buck. Took a picture of the rifle in the bed, and I'm like, standing here for 30 minutes, and I'm dressed super light, and it's cold. And made sure my scope was all cleaned and everything, and I timed it. It was 30 minutes. I'm like, all right, good. Now let's follow that buck. And he ran big, long bounds, and went through some wide open hardwoods, went through a big bowl right up the other side, and it kind of started to turn into a mix of softwood again. And it was all that hobble, that rubbery hobble bush type stuff that sucks to walk through. Yeah. Well, he got to the top of that knoll, and it was all that moose hobble stuff, and you could see where he stood there, and he looked right back over his backtrack. Well, he could have seen me at 80 yards when I came into that hardwood. And you could see his tracks were just everywhere in the snow where he was pacing and he was just standing there all anxious. And he didn't see me coming. Then I could just see his tracks where he just swapped ends, pissed in the snow. He walked a little bit further. He walked 50 yards, and boom, he's right back to digging ferns again. I got him. I'm going to kill him. He's on his feet.
Yep.
He's on his feet. I didn't follow that deer another quarter mile, and I saw him. I just saw the little bit of his ass. He was just walking over a hill, and he was just like, just chugging along. I just see a bit of a beam and a little bit of his ass, not enough to shoot. And I'm like, oh my God, he's right there. He doesn't even know I'm here. And he was kind of going to the left, so I kind of scooted off the track. And then I could see bits and pieces of him walking down through the spruces, and he stopped, and he's eating mushrooms off of a log. And I'm trying to get closer to him and get a good shot at him. Well, it's kind of like a bowling alley lane down through those big mature balsams. And where his head was and everything, I'm like, well, there's the goodies right there. That's where his chest is right there. And I put it right in between 2 trees. Boom! Shot, and he takes out of there like a rocket, and I don't get a second shot at him, and he's gone. I'm like, I drilled him. He's dead. I walk down there, there's blood and hair everywhere, and following his track, and all you can smell is that tarsal gland. You know, I'm like, oh, he's piled up. Wind's right in my face. He's piled up 20 yards away. 100 yards later, I'm still following blood. And I'm just like, what's going on? Where did I shoot the deer? So I'm following him, get to about a half-mile mark or whatever, I jump him, I shoot 2 or 3 more times at him. I'm looking at the bed, and I'm just like, man, I can't. I hit him back by looking at the blood in the bed or whatever, but I'm just like, I got knee-deep snow. I got all day. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to kill him either today or tomorrow. I got all day. I mean, he's running further away from the truck, and now he's starting to arc back. But I mean, I'm like 3.5, 4 miles from the truck right now. I'm just like, man, it's gonna be a long day. I should have ended it right back there.
Yeah.
I should be done gutting him, and be taking hero shots and be dragging him by now. And I jumped him one more time and shot at him. Then never touched him, and now he's headed directly back towards the road, and he gets back to that last beaver pond where I jumped him the first time ever, and he goes within 100 yards of that bed and gets right on my tracks where I followed him out of that bed where he was running, and he like gets in those tracks for a little bit and he messes around, then he cuts off of them and he goes right back down to that same beaver pond, that first one. He's going along the edge of that, and I'm like, he's going to be bedded right here. So I slowed right down just at a snail's pace. And I'm like, he's going to be bedded right here. It's real thick. He just feels real comfortable right down in here. Pretty soon, he pops up out of his bed, and he runs straight away from me. And there's a big balsam tree right there, and I'm kind of right near a blowdown. I was getting ready to step around it, so I can't step to the right. And I didn't really dare to because time seems like it's going by really slow, but it's like it's everything's happening in a fraction of a second. But he's running straight away from me, and all I remember seeing was antlers on either side of the tree, and I couldn't shoot him. And I've got the gun up, and I'm just watching him like he's going to go to the right. So I'm right on the right side of that tree. Pretty soon, there he goes to dive to the right. Boom! And there's snow is falling off the trees. You can't see anything. And I'm just like, well, that wasn't much of an opportunity. So I racked in another shell, and I go running up there to where I last saw him, and it looks like you're dragging a sled. It's just like you can see where he just snow angeled in the snow, and then he's all over the place, and he's laying right there dead 10 yards.
Jeez.
I'm just like, whoa, I hit him. So
you hit him that last time.
Yeah, I piled him
drilled
that
him
last
out.
time,
Yeah.
you know, and it was just practice of shooting running deer.
Right. Where did you hit him the first time?
First time I clipped him right in the hind quarter, and it kind of came out like right in front of the other hind quarter.
So you got some gut.
Yeah. So I just somehow the deer, well, looking at the tracks, and I was thinking about those, like, yeah, I could see the part of his head over here, and I thought that was his chest. What he was doing was he was eating those mushrooms, and he was kind of walking around that log, and he just shooting down those little lanes. I just lost where I was on the deer. I just shot the wrong part of him.
Well, he was in trouble.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, you get him leaking on snow, then it's usually over.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of track. I was going to say that's the beauty of tracking. You get them leaking. And you're persistent. You're gonna get them whether it's today or tomorrow.
You just got to keep it together and
You
got
to stay focused and stick to your guns for sure.
Yeah, you can't get discouraged. You just got to get laser focus and awareness and be ready. Like don't let anything get by you. You know, it's just. But that's the funnest. That's the whole chase is where it's at. You know, like. If you could bottle that emotion of when you're following them bucks, when you're following them bucks and they're getting in by those swamps or they start browsing and they're making antler marks in the snow, it's what we live for.
Yeah,
you know, it's nothing like it.
You're on edge a lot. Yeah,
it's so much fun.
It is.
And I'm just like, it's fun to kill one at 10 yards with a bow working a scrape, but when you're tracking one, the story is just always so much better. Like I could listen to tracking stories all day long.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You can listen to stories of killing bucks out of a tree stand, and it's like they're all fairly similar.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, I just saw him coming, and then he was, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That story's laying out in front of you while you're doing it the whole time. You know? It's just, every deer's different, and it's
and
awesome.
you can have a hell of a story and never kill one.
Oh, yeah.
But you can sit in a stand daylight to dark 10 days, and you don't have much of a story.
I sat
very exciting at all.
I sat there.
You know,
you got to
you
do
don't
a lot
have
of
any
thinking.
excitement unless you kill one or you see something oddball happen.
That 30 seconds of excitement and one finally comes in.
Yeah, everything's packed right into one, one short time. But the tracking, it's all spread.
Yeah. Especially that story, that 3-4 beaver bogs like that, and you're going through.
Oh,
you're on edge the whole time. You're like,
after he went out of that second one, I'm just like, what is this deer going to do this all day long? How much can he eat? He's got to lay down eventually. I mean, he's all by himself out here, and it's after Thanksgiving. You know, so he should be done with the rut. You know, and it's very low deer density out there. mean, I've followed deer for 3 or 4 miles in a straight line, never cut another deer track.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, buddy, we're thinking the same thing. Where are all the deer? Yeah. You know, he can't find a doe, and I can't catch up to him.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, how far is he's willing to find a doe harder than I am to kill him.
Yeah.
And he just didn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
But you find them late season, like after Thanksgiving, man, it's a different game.
Yeah.
They're around those swamps, they're browsing, and they're thinking about recuperating.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so much fun.
That Charlie Foote there for a couple episodes, be as happy to hunt tracking bucks on the first day as the last day because, you know, you're effective all the way through it. Especially
absolutely.
That late season. He's even said, I think, late season, he's killing his better than average bucks when a lot of people giving up.
Yeah.
You know, and
I
deer slowing
late
down.
season's the best.
I prefer late season, and
Yep.
especially if I'm talking about gun hunting and tracking them,
Mm-hmm.
and give me snow after Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
I don't want it before that.
Yeah.
Unless
I don't want to track a buck that's crazy and rut unless you can get him with a hot dog.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
But getting
Unless
they're
he's
only with him
a
for
hot-
3 days. It's like a narrow window.
And I've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
If you can find one with a hot doe, it's
Yeah.
easiest.
Well,
Because, man, they're dumb.
Well, that big wide
Dumb.
buck that I killed in Vermont,
Yep.
that big white 8, and that
Yep.
one was 200 even.
Beautiful.
I'd hunted that deer for a few years, and
Yep.
that deer, I cut his track, and I hadn't followed him very long, and he found a hot doe. And man, I was following that deer around. You could just see where he was just harassing that doe, and
Yeah.
pretty soon you'd see where he'd cut across his own track.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's 20 minutes fresher. And he had a huge foot on him. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's definitely the same deer.
Yeah.
So I'd follow him a little bit more, and then boom, he'd cut across the track again.
Yeah.
And then he'd get all frustrated, and he'd go over and just wreck a tree, and
Yeah.
then go right back to chasing that doe again. I get into the corner of this old cut, and it's all beach whips and everything, and their track is everywhere. I can see that running track as far as I can see. I'm like, I'm done walking anywhere.
Yeah. You're just going
Like,
to stand there.
He's right here.
Yeah.
And I'm right on it. I didn't stand there 3 or 4 minutes, and boom, here comes that doe, and
Yep.
boom, here comes that. He was a 24-inch buck, just like that one.
Yep.
Here he comes, right behind her. And I'm
Beauty.
like, holy cow! And he comes into those beach whips, and the doe walks through an opening. I'm just like, I'm going to shoot him right in that opening, right there. He walks right into that opening and stops, and it's like 70 yards.
Yep.
Boom! I shoot, and he never twitches. There's so many whips, my bullet wasn't making it to him, you know. Racked in another shell, boom, I shot again, and he runs out of it. And I'm like, I hit him that time. So I can hear them running up through that clear cut, and it's wicked thick, low beach whips. All you can hear is his antlers just going crazy through the beach whips, and then it's dead silence. I'm like, I bet he's dead right there, because it was dead silent that day, no wind. So I'm standing there, and I kind of pop the magazine out, and I put one more extra shell down in the magazine. I'm like, it could get western. Who knows what's going to happen? You know? And I'm just standing there. I'm like, I don't dare move anywhere because I don't know where the doe is. And
Right.
if he's dying, he's not going to be any less dead in 10 minutes because I know he hasn't moved anywhere. The clear cut's so thick, you'd hear him make a step, you know. Then pretty soon you hear him grunt. I'm like, well, he's still alive. And then here comes that doe running right at me, and she comes out of that clear cut at 30 yards, and he's right on her tail. And boom, and I piled him, and he just, like a sled right there in the snow. And that was the only time that I hit him.
You never hit him the
I
first
never
time.
touched him.
A
the
good
other
thing
two.
you didn't go running.
No, never touched
Wow.
him. So it was the only thing that saved me on that one was standing right there and just being patient. And then he finally chased because they didn't know where I was.
Right.
And then he finally got harassing that doe again, and she came out of that cut and right in front of me, and I shot him, boom, and piled him right there in front of me.
I mean, to them, a tree just fell over.
Yeah, they don't know.
I mean, that's it. They don't know.
His mouth
Yeah.
was wide open.
Right.
His mouth was wide open. That he was doing nothing but just hammering her around that whole chunk of woods for who knows how long, all day. And that was hunting that deer for 3 years and getting a bunch of pictures of him and just dreaming about killing that deer every way you could think of.
Right.
And I wasn't 100% sure that was him because everything happened so quick. But, I mean, I walk up there to the deer laying there in the snow, and he looked like he was 30 inches wide laying there on the snow. And
Just
it's
a
like,
giant,
oh, my
yeah.
God, that's Wide Clyde.
Yeah.
That was his name.
Yep.
And that was just a phenomenal day. And he was the first buck that I've put on scales in the Northeast that was right at 200.
Right
And
on the
that was,
money.
That was the end of, that was Thanksgiving week.
No kidding. Yeah, he was a good buck.
Yeah, he scored 136, I believe.
It's a dandy.
136, 200 pounder. That's the Vermont gold standard
Yeah.
right there. You
Oh,
can't
that's
beat
wide.
that.
Yeah,
It's just
big
beautiful.
beauty.
He was almost 23 inside.
Yeah,
Yeah,
your
so-
patience killed that deer.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
people wouldn't be
Well,
able to
see,
do that. You know?
people should take out of that story is when you said you came into the tracks going every which way.
Yeah.
And you said, I'm done tracking.
Keep your eyes up.
You're done tracking.
You're done looking at the ground.
You're
That's
done.
for damn sure.
And I think a lot of people make the mistake of they get into that situation and their head goes down.
Well, they're looking like
They're trying to figure out the
They're
track.
doing the lost wallet.
Exactly.
They're looking like they dropped something. They're like,
See,
oh, what's going on? And that buck just goes ding, 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 right by him.
You're there.
Yeah.
When you found the fresh barnyard, as some guys will call it, you don't have to track anymore.
Yeah. You're just hoping that you haven't already screwed it up.
That's it. You're in. You found the gold at the end of the rainbow. Pick your head up. You're done tracking. You're going to kill
This
him.
is where it's going to happen.
This is where it's going to happen. And that's a skill.
Yeah.
Figuring out when
It's
you're
by
at that
screwing up.
place. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you can figure out when you're at that spot
Yeah.
where, because not every time you track a buck, it's to his bed and he's looking at you and you shoot him. Like sometimes he's with a hot doe and you come to the tending area, some people call it, like where they chase him around in circles for 5 hours. Like,
that's why, a lot of people are asking for advice on tracking. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, the best way to learn how to track deer is by doing it.
Well,
there is no way. I can tell you about every time that I've screwed up, but I'm not going to be able to show you exactly what you're looking for.
Yep.
You're going to have to go there. You're going to have to go track those deer and screw it up. And then when you screw it up, you just sit there for a second and figure out what you did wrong. Because it's all laid out for you right there in the snow. Figure out what you did wrong. Yep. Okay, what did he do? What should I have picked up on? Because you should have picked up on something. 99% of the time, you made the mistake. It wasn't the deer just getting lucky. You made a mistake. And you just got to not make them again. When something similar happens,
learn from your mistakes.
You got. It's all just
recognize why
you're
going to
learn. You're going to learn so many things tracking deer. It's awesome.
Oh, the amount that you're going to learn about deer while you're tracking, you can't get that from anything
and
else.
See, that's why I think you're such a good bow hunter. When you go down to New Jersey and stuff, you have all this knowledge of deer that most guys that are bow hunters,
especially in that area, those guys have never tracked deer down there.
And when you go to Iowa, you're going to be so far ahead of these guys.
And I trapped a lot. I trapped all through my youth, and that's figuring out funnels. Like look at Tom Miranda and those guys. They know how to recognize funnels and pinch points. And me trapping, figuring out, where a coyote's going to walk, how a beaver's going to swim, otters and everything, how they use the lay of the land.
Right.
I've been looking for funnels my whole life. Like that's for everything, for trapping, for bow hunting, for everything. And then you're following bucks around in the snow.
Right.
And you're noticing how they're using those funnels.
Yep.
And now with Onyx, like I keep track of where I went during the day. You go back and look at that on a map, and you're just like, oh, look at how that buck used that lay of the land right along that bench, and then he just plopped over that one little saddle right there.
It's not on accident.
Go back in there and check out that saddle in the spring. Then apply that stuff from tracking a buck. Then apply some of that to your spring scouting, and you start to see, wow, look at all the buck sign in here with bare ground.
Yep.
Wow, if we don't get snow, I might be able to kill one right here, and you can. That's the fun part.
Right. That was my next bullet point that I had written down here was trapping. I wanted to ask you about if you think trapping's made you a better deer hunter.
100%. Yep. You look at a lot of those guys that are really good trappers, and they are phenomenal
deer hunters.
Like Lucas Benoit.
Yep.
A
lot of those
guys.
He's
a phenomenal deer hunter.
Yep.
And Stephen Champa's starting to trap quite a bit more now.
Yep.
And he even said something. He was in that last podcast talking about it on Hunt Suburbia.
Yeah, that was a good one. I listened to it.
It's all that stuff. The more you can get involved in different aspects of it, it makes you a well-rounded hunter. I think it's better to be I think as far as deer hunting, it makes you a better hunter to be a jack of all trades,
right? Instead of
than just a master of one. Because if you don't get that right conditions, you're out of the game.
Right.
If you don't get what if you're just a stand hunter and then the majority of your fall it's 65, 70 degrees, south wind, terrible conditions. It's like, and then all of a sudden you don't know anything about tracking, then you get snow. Well, it's cold. I'm going to go sit in a tree stand. No, you should be tracking.
Yeah.
Because you could go track those bucks and figure some more shit out for when, it's just a better, I think if you have all the skills,
you have better odds.
You have an edge.
Yeah.
Like when I get snow on the ground, I got a better edge than just cold weather sitting in a stand.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's the most aggressive form of whitetail hunting is following him right into his bed. So.
For sure.
That's awesome, man.
That's a good way to wrap it up, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
good one, man.
Well, thanks for doing this with us. We
Yeah.
got a lot of great tracking stories, a lot of good tips there.
Hey, man, it's been a blast.
It's always fun to talk deer hunting. So
Absolutely.
we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.
Thanks
See ya.
for having me, man.
Hey everybody, we hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of fun to record. Just want to say, if you like the show and want to help us support and grow it, please recommend this podcast to somebody that hasn't heard it. Follow us or like our social media pages, or slide on over to staggergear.com and pick yourself up something. We really appreciate the support and hope to continue to grow this and bring you better episodes each and every week.